Hello friends, my name is Nick and this week's plant of the week is Xerosicyos danguyi. Out of all the plants I grow in my home, this scientific name sounds the most like gibberish. But the common name for this houseplant is the silver dollar vine. I think there's a couple other very similar names that might also go for this houseplant. This is native to Madagascar and is a little twining and vining kind of succulent plant. You can see I have it here on a bamboo hoop since it doesn't really vine around things like a Hoya does, at least in my experience. It kind of just shoots off these shoots of new growth like I have right here, but they kind of will just like reach out all over the place. So I recently tried growing it on the bamboo skewer, and has it really grown much other than this little thing right here that I haven't even attached to the skewer yet? No, but we will see how it goes. But I really love the appearance of this. I feel like these are often grouped visually with like Hoyas and Dischidias, but this is in a completely different family, not very closely related whatsoever. But if you are into growing Hoyas and Dischidias and you want to branch out, I highly recommend giving this a go, as the care isn't that different. But there are, there definitely is some different care, as this is much more related to succulents and cacti. So you're going to want to give this some pretty bright light. I grow mine right now in an east-facing window. A west-facing window is fine too. These leaves could possibly scorch in a south-facing window if you throw it right in the window, or if it's like really harsh south-facing, like direct sunlight. So I would keep an eye out there, but I feel like this could absolutely acclimate and thrive in a south-facing window. So just be mindful there if you just brought home a silver dollar vine and you're still finding a place to put this plant in your home. But bright light is absolutely best. That's how you're going to get some beautiful large round leaves on these plants, and then also make sure that the leaves aren't too far apart. If this is like stretching out looking for light, it might look kind of gangly if it's starting to etiolate a little bit. The watering for this houseplant, I think, is kind of more on par to the Hoyas and Dischidias, where you're probably watering this like once a week, maybe pushing that to like every 8 to 10 days, depending on how much light this houseplant's getting, and also the soil and the planter. Obviously, all of those are going to come into play into how often you're watering your houseplant. But I'm just giving this a drink once a week. You can see it's in the terracotta planter, so it's obviously sucking the moisture out from the soil. And the soil I'm using is also full of perlite and little rocky thingies, little rocks, I guess. I don't want to call them rocks, but it's definitely rocky. So definitely use a more sandy, rocky soil that's appropriate for succulents and cacti. I think this is definitely a plant that would rot very quickly on you if you were to not give it enough light, or use too large of a planter, or use too like heavy or loamy of a soil. So I would do all three of those things, and I feel like from there out you probably will have smooth sailing with this houseplant. But of course, I'm going to give you some more information than just that. But when it comes to the planter size, this is like a 4-inch terracotta pot. I got mine in a 4-inch nursery planter, so I was just like, if the shoe fits, the nursery planter fit directly inside here, so I was just like, let me just plant this right inside here. I don't want to go that much bigger. I'd say if you're increasing the planter size for your Xerosicyos, I would say 1/2 inch. That's really as big as you need to go bigger. Further than that, and you might cause some problems. But if you are going to go a little bigger than that, I would just be sure to use a very well aerated, more rocky, sandier mixture. The temperature for these are going to do totally fine in your standard household temperature. I think these are going to do fine from like 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees. I think that's pretty much the ballpark. I would be surprised if your home's dropping down to 50 degrees, I'll be honest. But so this will be totally fine. As for the humidity though, these are going to thrive in lower humidity. Maybe if there's a room that's a little drier in your house, or a little closer to the heater in the winter, will be fine compared to some of those other houseplants that require higher humidity or would kind of like crisp up. This is not going to do that to you. This absolutely wants drier conditions. In fact, if you can put this outside for like the warmer months, I feel like you might have better luck if you do live in a very humid environment, because it might be just like too humid in your home. But I don't have a problem here in Philadelphia with that. I'm just thinking more if you live in like a more tropical environment, I wouldn't be surprised. This is definitely this is from Madagascar, so it prefers a more arid environment. I've never been to Madagascar. I'm now thinking like, I know nothing about Madagascar, so maybe don't take my word for that. But anyway, moving on. I think a really fun fact about this houseplant that you might be surprised is this is actually caduciform. Now, I believe that these are pretty much always sold as cuttings. They're propagated by cuttings, which is a very easy way to propagate this houseplant, just like you would a Hoya or a golden pothos. You just cut the plant in between 2 nodes, make sure you have at least 1 node submerged in the soil substrate. I would probably let these callus over too. So I would chop it, just like place it on the counter out of direct sunlight for like 2 days for the wound to just heal over top, because it could rot easier if you're putting it into some kind of substrate. But from there, this thing would root up pretty quickly. Also, a tip that I got from the cactus seller back when I worked at the houseplant store when you are propagating succulents and cacti is that after you let them callus over and after you plant them in the soil, don't water them for a couple more days, as they're going to need to adjust to the soil. Once again, they could rot quicker, but then if you let them sit for like a couple days and then water them, they're going to be searching for the water, while at first they might not be searching for the water. So hot tip. But back to the caudiciform thing. So if you aren't familiar with what a caudiciform is, it's this kind of plants that have like what looks like a giant, like, I want to say like a potato in the base of the pot, and then like all the plants coming out of that like potato thingy. Or sometimes they look like an elephant's kind of foot thingy. They look really funky or like really trunky. There's a lot of different kinds of caudiciforms. I think the one that we are most familiar with on social media is the Stephania erecta, which is just like that little potato-like thing that has those kind of like round, reminiscent of like a leafier Pilea peperomioides leaf. If that rings a bell at all, I'm sure if you have a plant Instagram, I'm sure you've seen this at some point. So this grows as a caudiciform. However, when these are grown from cuttings, I don't believe they will ever form the caudiciform, at least to the extent that you will see. If you go to a botanical garden and they have one of these plants, which most botanical gardens do, you're gonna see this like giant mound, like woody, potato-like mound. And that's where all the plants coming out. And it's really magical, but like I said, I don't think you're gonna get that effect of this houseplant in the home. Also, backing up a little bit, going back to the propagation, I've knocked a couple leaves off this houseplant before, and like this is a very slow growing houseplant, so I can't say for certain, but let me just like nestle one of these out. So this one right here, for example, I know you're kind of far away from the camera, but it's rooted up. I just put it back in the soil. I probably didn't water the plant too soon because I'm pretty lackadaisical with watering this houseplant. I feel like the leaves would probably rot pretty quickly if you just broke a leaf off, threw it in the soil, and then watered it. But I guess I waited the appropriate amount of time, and now it's starting to root. And I don't know if this is going to be similar to like a Hoya carrii, for example, where it would never produce like vines and stuff from just a single leaf cutting, or if it's going to react more like a kalanchoe, where a single leaf is all you need. This is not in the Hoya family, even though, like I said, it's probably often mistaken to be closely related to Hoyas and Dischidias. So yeah, this is going to be a learning process for me, but just kind of wanted to point it out because I have a couple leaves in the soil that I'm just kind of monitoring what they're doing. This does not require a lot of fertilizer. You can fertilize it like once or twice throughout the growing season with just a standard succulent and cactus fertilizer. And these, I don't believe they are toxic to pets. Now, I'm not sure if there's just not enough information on this houseplant or if it's non-toxic, but I feel like whenever I did research, it never said toxic. So take that with a grain of salt, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that these are non-toxic to pets. So that's a big plus. But I think that's about it for this houseplant. I think we covered all the bases. You will not often see them like the way that my houseplant is here, growing up this bamboo hoop. I just kind of got inspired recently. I saw one growing at the Philadelphia Flower Show, one of those like circle, kind of like wire trellises, and it was just really a vibe. So I was like, I'm gonna do that my own way. So really took some inspiration there, but I think that's going to do it for today's video on how to care for Xerosicyos danguyi, the silver dollar vine. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you don't already, you can follow me on Patreon for even more houseplant content. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram at phillyfoliage. Of course, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.